And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I am Michael DeLon. Today I'm talking with Luke Homen. Luke, thanks for taking some time to be with me today.
Absolutely. Excited to do this. This is fun.
Well, it's going to be a great conversation. So Luke is he's a new client of ours. We're building a great friendship because I love what he does. He's an attorney in Oklahoma, but he's a special attorney. He's a bankruptcy attorney, and he's got a great company. In fact, I think you're like Oklahoma's largest bankruptcy firm.
Yes.
And what we want to talk about today is the truth about bankruptcy because I think it kind of has a bad rap. And Luke's here to help kind of set the record straight. So Luke, tell me, how in the world did you get doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I went to law school and I didn't have a firm plan in mind of what I was going to do. I had some ideas, but when I graduated law school in 2008, the legal sector crashed. It was a terrible time to be an attorney. And so I ended up doing workers' compensation law and personal injury law, and found out pretty quickly that I really didn't like it. But it was also a really good experience. I got to have immediate client contact. I got to do depositions and trial work. I even did an appeal. Um, but it wasn't the right fit for me. It was litigation's very high stress. It's also, I don't know. I didn't like that in personal injury and workers' comp, you can't really fix people's problems. They come to you with some way they got hurt. At the end of the case, you're getting them some money, but you're not really solving their problems, right?
Hmm.
So my wife had a personal journey that took us from California to Oklahoma. That's a long story. But we ended up getting here, and I knew I needed an attorney job, and I knew that I didn't want to do personal injury or workers' comp. And so I had done a little bit of probate work. That is the kind of law after somebody dies,
Okay.
right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to blast out like 120 resumes and cover letters to just attorneys all across Oklahoma City and just try and find a job. And so I got some interviews, and one of them I interviewed with a guy who said, okay, Luke, I have a probate practice. I also have a bankruptcy practice. And I said, I didn't take bankruptcy in law school. I don't know anything about bankruptcy. I couldn't tell you even what chapters of bankruptcy are, right? I
Yeah.
knew nothing. And he said, well, because you're licensed in California, you can immediately practice bankruptcy here, even though you don't know what you're doing. And I'll teach you. It'll be great. Right. And so I started doing this bankruptcy thing, and I discovered that I absolutely loved it. And so over time, working for that guy, we kind of ramped down the probate work a little bit, ramped up the bankruptcy. And I just found that I really loved helping people struggling with their finances
Mm,
get out of debt.
yeah.
And I liked the intellectual challenge of it, but I also loved the let's help people who are really struggling financially and make a difference.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And that's a great story, by the way. And I love the fact that you found what you love to do because I've told people for years if you do what you love to do, it's not a job. You go to work every day serving people and you're fired up.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this whole bankruptcy thing because
Good.
for years I've heard, it's like, oh, never no bankruptcy at the last resort. That's worse than divorce.
Yeah.
And all of that misconceptions around it. Unpack for us maybe a little bit of the
Sure.
baggage, but where is it that you really get to help people, and who is it that needs your help, I guess?
Okay. So the answer is most people may need my help at some point in the future, right? Because there's a stat, and I think it's something like 84% of Americans are just one large unexpected bill away from being unable to pay their debts. Because most people are living paycheck to paycheck. We're not setting aside large savings accounts for bad things. So common causes of bankruptcy, divorce is one, job loss, medical. But you could just imagine, okay, when you're living paycheck to paycheck, and I have been for, most of my life,
Yeah.
you get a large, I don't know, you're in a car accident that's not fully covered, your engine goes out, or you have an unexpected veterinary bill. One time my dog got bit by a snake. Like it's just, and the dog was fine.
Yeah.
And I've never seen a snake in my backyard ever again. But just one crazy thing like that, right? Now, one crazy thing isn't going to send you into bankruptcy.
Hmm.
There's not a minimum amount of debt you need to file bankruptcy, but I just tell people when it's more debt than you could ever repay on your own,
Yeah.
that's when it's time, right? And so somebody who's earning six figures, $15,000 of debt isn't a big deal.
Right.
It hurts, but they could pay it. But if you're working a minimum wage job, or you're working even an okay job, and you get $15,000 behind, well, that's not something you can repay and keep meeting all your regular obligations.
Right.
So I always describe debt as kind of this whirlpool spiral, right? So that one car accident or that one veterinary bill isn't by itself going to, send you down into bankruptcy. But you get that, now you're struggling to pay that, but then also your oven goes out. Or, the bigger picture stuff, what if you get divorced and now instead of having two incomes for one set of bills, you've got two separate households, but you still have the mortgage payment, the car payment, all these things that you set up that you used to be able to afford before something bad
Right.
happened, right?
Right.
And so bankruptcy is really that moment in time when you're saying, I can't do this on my own. I can never get out of this amount of debt, and it's just getting worse and worse, and I need help,
Yeah.
right? So I always joke that nobody ever wants to hire me. They don't want to be my client, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's that way with other areas of law too, like criminal or family. But really, like, people put off calling the bankruptcy attorney way too long because of just what you said, that negative stigma of, oh, this is life-changing horrible. And it's not. This is life-changing awesome. But you've got to think, credit card companies and loan companies are out there making billions and trillions of dollars. So
Mm-hmm.
they can afford to be building that messaging of, well, don't you ever file bankruptcy. Don't you ever get rid of this debt, while they're just continuing to print money.
Exactly. Yeah. And dare I say, and I don't know if this to be true, but my guess is they probably have an envelope system in their whole thing saying, here's how much debt we're going to write off anyway. They probably plan for some of it, but it's the
Absolutely.
I think when you and I first talked and things, your passion for this and your ability to unpack some areas that I don't know that I honestly really connected with, like the medical issues. What
Yeah.
if you have a stroke and you can't work for a number of
Right.
months and the
Yeah.
bills start paying up? Are you going to live with that and try, I'm just going to dig myself out and deal with the stress? Or are you
Yeah.
going to do what the law allows you to do, right?
Right. And medical is so much deeper, right? Imagine other things. Like, I had a client who he was a trucker, and then he had started having seizures. Well, they yanked his commercial driver's license, right? You can't be commercially driving if you're having seizures.
Yeah.
But that's the only job skill he had.
Yeah.
So, okay, now he's doing some retraining, he's finding something else to do. That takes time. And then he's going to be making a fraction of what he used to make. Um, or also with medical, it doesn't even have to be your medical issue. Your daughter, your granddaughter, someone else in your family has a major medical event or medical condition, and that wrecks the finances of the whole family while you're all gathering together. It
Yeah.
takes a village. Well, it costs that village a lot of money, and it might wreck your finances too along the way. And yes, the law absolutely has bankruptcy here for people. It's something you are entitled to do every 8 years uh, for a Chapter 7,
Okay.
just as long as you meet the right requirements, and they're not hard.
Okay. Let's talk. And I'm glad you mentioned that in chapter 7. So, I mean, I think most people would hear that and say, "Well, I've heard chapter 7." Unpack for us, like, just the basics of the different types
Cool.
of bankruptcy that you deal with, and help clarify it in people's minds. What's the difference between like a 7 and a 13 and a 22? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Right. So there's the different chapters that Congress created. And so my favorite, there's one for family farmers and fishermen. That's chapter 12. Nobody ever does it. A few get filed every year. It doesn't really work. But really, for individuals who I represent, you have sevens and 13s.
Okay.
Businesses file a chapter 11. So Toys R Us might file a chapter 11, General
Okay.
Motors, chapter 11. But regular people file sevens and 13s.
Okay.
A Chapter 7 is what most people think of as bankruptcy. It's about a 3.5 month process where you show the court your full financial picture. We file about a 70-page document with the full financial disclosure. And then we also provide, in a sealed manner, tax returns, bank statements, pay stubs. And the way I describe it is this: the court is going to look at it and say, okay, obviously this person is broke and needs to be here. And we could tell from all these financials that yes, they qualify for bankruptcy because you're telling the truth about your finances and you're broke, right? So that's a chapter 7, but chapter 7 is only available to people who aren't high earners.
Okay.
And it's a little bit complicated how to figure out, am I a high earner? You probably know,
Right.
right? But people who are high earners file a chapter 13 bankruptcy. Chapter
Okay.
13 is 5 years long. It's a repayment of your debts. Now, that
Okay.
doesn't mean you're paying all of your debts back. You're doing it in a court protected way. We're reducing interest rates. We're freezing amounts in place. And the court is going to say, based on a math formula, all right, we think you can afford to pay this much per month towards your debts. It doesn't mean you're paying all of them. And
Okay.
also, when the Chapter 13 is filed, we're stopping interest. So instead of paying credit card level interest rates, 20, 20, 25,
Yeah.
or sometimes on a payday loan, it might be 200% interest. When you freeze those in place, even if you're paying all of your debts back, now it's actually manageable because you're probably paying maybe even half the amount that you would pay outside bankruptcy because the power of interest is so huge. And that's how these credit card companies and loan companies make so much money
Yeah.
because they're printing money with these interest rates. And you, the consumer, yeah, you really did take out some debt, but that's a lot to repay for somebody in your situation.
Right. Yeah. And it's like the snowball continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. But what you just said is if we can if nothing else, stop the interest and
Yeah,
restructure. If we just restructure that with no more interest on what you own or what you owe, that's one. I mean, there's a sigh of relief there. But
right.
if you can restructure it and maybe reduce some things and pay it out and go, okay, there's actually a light at the end of this tunnel because it becomes disconcerting and I don't even know what the right word is, just crushing
Yeah, right.
emotionally for a person and a family. Do
Right.
you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it can destroy marriages and it can destroy, stress has a huge effect on your body, your health.
Yeah.
And being in debt and having debt collectors call you and getting statements in the mail and knowing that you can never pay these things back, it's crushing. And it really can wreck a person's mind and body and family and everything. It's that feeling that you have no hope, right?
Right.
And so a lot of times people tell me that even after they talk to us for the very first time, just knowing that there's a way to deal with this and giving them that hope that it's not just always going to be like this, that by itself is amazing.
Yeah.
And then we get people out of all of this debt. You get that fresh start that the law really intended you to have. Well, now you can start over
And
and it'll be so much better for you.
yeah. And the other thing that just hit me, look, is I think people have this stigma that if I hire Luke and I go through bankruptcy, I'm going to get a tattoo on my forehead that says bankrupt, right? And
Right.
everybody's going to know it. My guess is it's kind of under wraps, and most people,
Right. You got to think maybe you're living in a small town 200 years ago and they print it in the town newspaper and everybody
yeah,
knows. Okay, the world doesn't work like that anymore. There is a government website called pacer.gov that just about nobody ever goes on. And you
okay,
could type in somebody's social security number and see if they filed a bankruptcy.
okay,
So it can be done. It is a public record. Nobody is going to know. So
right,
here's a fun story. I had a neighbor just lived down the street. We'd see him all the times on walks. And he looked like he was really well off. He had two BMWs in the garage and just always super nice. Well, one day I was in bankruptcy court with one of my clients, and my neighbor was there. I would have never guessed that he
yeah,
was filing for bankruptcy. Um, but there he was. I only figured it out because I happened to be there standing next to him. And
yeah,
thankfully, he hired a different attorney that was really good. So,
yeah,
he made a good choice. But then interestingly, the BMWs were still in the garage.
yeah,
So, what that really means is he didn't own those BMWs.
right,
He's probably making a really high lease payment so he
mhm,
could show everybody how awesome he was doing, or feel like he was because he had these BMWs, but he didn't own them,
right.
right? It's all appearances.
It,
But to get back to your point, nobody's even gonna know.
right,
Like, if your neighbor is going through a criminal case or a divorce case, yeah, the neighborhood's probably going to know about it, right? They're going to hear the sirens.
Right.
But bankruptcy, it's an electronic filing, and we don't even go to court in person anymore. We do Zoom style calls.
Yeah.
So yeah, nobody's going to find out.
Well, and I think what I really want people to hear today is that there is hope. If you're under the burden of those credit card companies, and I don't even know if I mean some people probably wait until they start getting the letters in the mail from collection agencies and things. I'm guessing that's it's not that it's too late, but why wait that long? If
Right.
if you're in a situation and you can kind of foresee that, oh no, I'm starting to go down for the second time, per se. Call
Yeah.
Luke. Say, here's
Yeah.
my situation. What in the world can I do? Is that a fair time for people to just reach out
Yeah,
and call?
absolutely. You know, um, People don't want to deal with their problems oftentimes, whether it's bankruptcy or whatever else. And so usually we don't get that phone call until things are really, really bad. Uh, but the sooner you figure out that this is necessary and just have a phone call consultation, you can find out what your options are.
Yeah,
And it's a lot easier of a process when it's not in a hurry. Bankruptcy can stop a wage garnishment. Some states don't allow wage garnishments, but most do. And the bankruptcy filing stops that. But if you're being garnished, you're already losing money forcibly out of every paycheck.
yeah.
Yeah, we can stop it, but time is of the essence. We got to do everything we can. If you can get ahead of this and start realizing that this is going to be a problem, it makes the process a lot easier and smoother and less stressful, a lot less stressful when you can get ahead of your problems.
So let's talk. Since a lot of my audience are business owners and entrepreneurs, do you see them if they get into trouble with the business? Let's say for some reason they're
Yeah.
buying equipment or whatever. Is that a Chapter 11 for a business, or is it a Chapter 13 for them personally, or does it?
So there's two different scenarios that present.
Okay.
Number one is you have an incredibly successful business and you expanded too fast or you got in over your head and you want to save the business and restructure it. That would be a Chapter 11.
Okay.
They are very expensive. We're talking $20,000, $30,000 of legal fees or more.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't handle those. That's something that you go hire your Tower law firm
Right.
to do that for you. And if you filed a bankruptcy in New York or Delaware, your attorney's probably charging you $1,000 an hour.
Right.
Right. But more common is the business failed or it's about to fail. And so what you do is you shut down the business and then you file a personal bankruptcy.
Okay.
Because when you start a business, you're signing personal guarantees for all your debts, right?
Yep.
It's one thing if you're Coca-Cola and the business takes out a business loan. Okay, Coke's good for it. Nobody's worried about it. But when you or I start a business, the bank will say, okay, we'll write you a business loan, but sign that personal guarantee so that we can sue you if things go bad.
Exactly.
So realistically, what happens most of the time is the business owner shuts down the business. We file a personal bankruptcy, eliminate all those debts. And then sometimes even 2 days after we file the bankruptcy, they start up a brand new business. So maybe instead of paperback expert, now this new one is podcast expert. So
Right.
it's a new business. It's got a new name and it's a new identity. So those debts aren't still following it. But first we do the personal bankruptcy to eliminate all those personal guarantees. We shutter the old business. We let everybody know that the old business is gone. But most times it's not worth the tens. And that's just the legal fees. In the 11, you might still be paying back a lot of those debts. So unless you really have, I don't know, maybe you've got a retail shop with multiple locations, that's probably worth doing an 11.
Sure.
But if you just had a flower stand and it failed, well, file the 7,
That's right.
start a new flower stand,
And
and
yourself a bouquet and go on.
right. Or maybe don't do another flower stand if it failed.
That's
Uh,
right. Yeah.
you know, but yeah, so
That's
we
true.
do actually do a lot of business related bankruptcies. It's just that we're walking away, doing the bankruptcy, and then starting a new one.
Right. No, and that's good because I think so many people say, and maybe it's true that if I file a Chapter 7, I guess it is, I don't know,
Yeah.
it ruins my credit for 7 years and I can't do anything. And the truth is, from what I hear is, well, no, you can actually do some things, right? You can
Right. There's
right?
all kinds of things you can do. So one of the things that people don't realize is if you start looking at what your credit score is made out of, something like 40% of your credit score is your debt to income ratio, and it's all those bad debts, right?
Hmm.
So if you're maxed out on your credit cards, your debt to income ratio is going to be horrible. And so your credit score is suffering right now because of all your debts. Well, once you eliminate all those debts, your credit score sometimes even goes up
Yeah.
because you eliminate all those debts, especially if you're
Wow.
missing payments,
Yeah.
right? Chop off all that bad debt, start over. We have a company that can get you a refurbished used car, get you financed for that a day after you file bankruptcy. You'll get credit card offers in the mail very quickly.
Wow.
You know, you have the ability to rebuild your credit. It's not a death sentence. It's just a let's let's take a fresh start. And also realize it's more important to be debt free than it is to be 3 points higher on your credit score, right?
Right.
Uh, Credit cards want you to focus on your credit score, but if you're not making all these giant monthly payments that are keeping you from buying groceries, your life's going to be a lot better, even if your credit score is a touch lower.
Yeah, and that's great. And it's funny you said fresh start because I just wrote on my notes, get a fresh start in life because it really feels
Right.
to me, look, that when people are under that implosion of debt that I'm trying and I want to pay it off. There's just no way based on my current situations and stuff that it is a chance, an opportunity to get a fresh start in life to wipe the slate clean and go, okay,
Yeah.
let's go again. Is that a fair summary?
Absolutely. And for people who feel bad about this, right? First off, realize you need the money a heck of a lot more than they do, right? They are making billions and trillions. And to sometimes people think, well, I borrowed the money from Joe at my local bank, and I've known Joe since high school, and I couldn't do that to Joe. Okay, Joe is just an employee.
That's right.
Joe is not going to be hurt at all by you filing bankruptcy, and he'll still be your friend. And he'll probably give you another loan next week if you need one. But no, like these banks and these creditors, there's a reason they're allowed to charge so much interest. And part of
Yeah.
that is because we have a bankruptcy system to protect regular people.
Right. Well, and what people have to understand is they could probably call the place and start negotiating things, but it's so much better and faster to talk with Luke, and because you and your team are experts at this, you probably carry a bigger stick, but you know how to navigate the law
Right.
and do it in a way that it's 100% legal. I mean,
Well,
this is like the tax code, right? That you
yeah.
can save money on taxes if you understand the tax code. That's why we hire CPAs
Sure.
and tax accountants and things. You can navigate the financial system that the United States has given us. If you find yourself drowning in debt, or not even drowning, just realizing that, oh no, life happened.
Right.
That's when you need to reach out to
Yeah,
Luke.
and you need somebody on your side, right? So
That's good.
all of these creditors, they have their own legal departments, their own lawyers. They know all the ins and outs and everything that they can do to you. And
Yeah.
that's really scary if you don't understand your rights and if you don't understand all the various systems that our country has in place for debt collection, for suing people, there's processes for everything. And
Right.
it's a lot less scary when you get somebody on your side who can say, okay, here's how this actually works. They might be threatening you with X, but it takes about 8 months to do that. So don't feel like this is going to happen tomorrow.
Wow. No, and that's good. And if you don't have Luke on your side and his team, you're going to be struggling. You're going to continue to really be on that treadmill and not get anywhere except backwards, honestly, because of the stress, your quality of life is going to diminish, and you're going to just kind of go deeper into yourself and go, there's no hope. Actually, there is hope, and it's with Luke. And I love Luke's company. When I first met him, we were bouncing around and looking, and your company name, I love how you name it, is Convenient Bankruptcy. And
Yeah.
I love that because you make the process really convenient in that it doesn't take a ton of time. You said there are times when people actually have to come in, but it's not very often.
Just
You
one
file
time.
it. So unpack that a little bit.
All right. So what we do is we start people off with a series of phone consultations. First phone call, maybe you talk to us for 5 minutes and just that basic threshold of, do I even need a bankruptcy? What is it?
Mhm.
Right. And we'll just make sure that you're a right fit for another free consultation. And then we move you on to an hour-long phone call. And again, free, but we need to take about 8 pages of notes on your whole situation before we can give you any advice, right? Because every person's situation is different, and I can't give you advice if I don't know your whole situation.
Yes.
So then we have that conversation and we talk together. Is this the right fit for you? And if you're calling us, there's a good chance it is. But we still need to unpack all your story and your details and figure out if this is right. Okay, so then let's say that you decide to move forward. Well, you then need to email us, fax us, Dropbox us documents and pay for your bankruptcy. And that's important. Congress set up a law that says bankruptcy attorneys have to get paid up front. And we'll work it out. We can set up a payment plan. We do that all the time. So then we've set up all of this information, and we could be doing all of this over the computer. We could do phone calls and emails. My staff then has to build out that giant tax return. It's 70 pages or more, detailed questionnaire about not only everything you own, but all your debts, your income, your expenses, and this long questionnaire about your financial history. My staff does that based on talking to the client. So then we have the client come in the office one time because they are signing their bankruptcy petition under oath. And that's the biggest thing about bankruptcy is it's honest and full, transparent financial disclosure. As long as you tell the truth, your case is going to go really, really well. So I want you to come into the office and sit with us and go line by line through it so we can explain what each question means. And we've already answered them, but we want the client to understand that it's their answer that really is true.
Yes.
And then when we sign it, we file it on the computer that day. So then that's when the bankruptcy protection starts. And then as the case progresses, we could do phone calls. There's a Zoom hearing that you'll do, but you only need to come into the office once. And one of the reasons why that's so important is if you're struggling financially, the last thing you want to do is take a bunch of time off work for a bunch of attorney office visits.
Amen.
That's not realistic. So my thought is let's make the process convenient. You know, it's not going to be fun. It's not fun being broke. And I don't want to say it's easy because it's still going to be stressful, right? But we can at least make it convenient, if nothing else. And, you know, I like to say that we have, that we're convenient and compassionate at the same time. But let's streamline the process and let's make it easy on folks as best we can.
Well, and that's good. And the other things I'm going to add there is there's no condemnation. There is no judgment. It's, you know, everybody gets into situations in life because life happens. And if you find yourself in a spot where you're just trying to dig out and you're just going deeper, or something has happened and you're going to need some help, why don't you just reach out to Luke and his team and have that free consultation. Just say, here's what's going on. They're going to guide you down the pathway, and they're going to tell you the truth about bankruptcy, because you're listening to and heard and probably believe a lot of myths. It's time to get the truth. Luke, where does somebody go if they're sitting there? How do they get a hold of you?
Okay, so my office practices throughout the whole state of Oklahoma. So from the panhandle to the bottom right-hand corner, if you're anywhere in Oklahoma, we can represent you. My website is convenientbankruptcy.com. And then if you want to call us, it's 405-639-2099. So go to the website. You can book an appointment on the website. There's a little person who can chat with you on the website, or you could just submit the information on the website and we'll call you. Again, we're trying to give people options and make it easy. Now, if you don't live in Oklahoma, just Google bankruptcy attorney near me and then look at the reviews. If it's an attorney who's doing a good job and is doing this a lot, you should see 50 or 100 or more 5-star reviews. And if you're not seeing that, then I wouldn't call that guy. But I think that's the easiest way to find a good bankruptcy attorney near you if you're in a different state, is just start looking at their reviews and read what people are saying.
Excellent. That is tremendous advice about how to find a bankruptcy attorney outside of Oklahoma. If you're inside Oklahoma, well, you know where to go is convenientbankruptcy.com, and talk with Luke and his team to see how they can tell you the truth about bankruptcy, but really breathe some hope into your life, bring some protection to you and your family, and put you back on track for a great future. Luke, man, thank you for being my guest. Thanks for
Yeah.
doing what you do. It's so very important, and I'm glad that we had some time just to unpack some of the myths, some of the processes, and help people understand the truth about bankruptcy.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.